After that grotesque invasion of my privacy, I'm almost tempted not to tell you that recently, the Senate killed GOP legislation to prohibit certain human-animal chimeras. In it, we read, the U.S. Senate on Thursday voted along party lines to kill a Republican amendment to a technological development bill aimed at banning experiments to create certain types of human-animal chimeras, which scientists use to further medical research over ethical concerns. This legislation was drafted by a Republican Senator, Mike Brown from Indiana. 48 Republicans voted to stop this gruesome practice, but were outvoted by 49 Democrats. Why would the Democrats be in favor of making human-animal hybrids? While most of the media is training the focus of the story onto the animals themselves, conjuring images of the island of Dr. Moreau. Other more sophisticated deflection tactics are centering the conversation on questions of biomedical ethics. For instance, in Principles of Biomedical Ethics by Childress and Beauchamp, they have a section on moral status in animals. They conclude that animals do not have the same moral status as humans. But the book was written in 1979, before chimeras became a thing. So a new raft of ethicists are asking, wouldn't humanizing animals lift their moral status, and doesn't this cause ethical dilemmas in experimenting on them? But this question, in and of itself, is a diversionary tactic, designed to shift attention away from why the chimeras are being made. We gain an insight into the second question when we see articles like this. Chinese military helped create humanized mice to test viruses, report. In it, we read, Chinese military researchers were part of a project that created mice with humanized lungs, apparently to test the infectiousness of various viruses, according to a Blockbuster report Thursday. The bioengineered rodents were developed using gene editing technology known as CRISPR and are mentioned in an April 2020 study that U.S. government virologists flagged for National Security Council officials investigating the origins of the coronavirus, Vanity Fair said. So what the issue of chimeras has to do with is the creation of bioweapons and the ability to quietly test on humanized animals to ensure that weapons are operating as designed. So what the Democrats in the Senate were quietly doing was ensuring that we have a bioweapon-based economy going forward, in direct contradiction to both international law and U.S. law, which brings us to our second story. In Industries of the Future by Alec Ross, he writes, the last trillion-dollar industry was built on a code of ones and zeros. The next will be built on our genetic code. In his book, he talks about the saturation of the information technology market and the rise of great new opportunities in life sciences. This, by the way, is why Bill Gates jumped from Microsoft and became a vaccine salesman. Noam Chomsky has noticed the same trend.
If you looked at MIT in the 1950s, when I got there, it was surrounded by electronics-based high-tech firms like Raytheon and iTech, huge IT firms. You take a look at MIT today, take a look at the buildings. It's Novartis, Pfizer, and so on. The reason is completely obvious. During the 50s and 60s, the cutting edge of the economy was electronics-based. So the way to get the public to pay for it was to scream Russians and to get them to pay higher taxes for the Pentagon. And then the Pentagon would fund the research and development, like my own salary, for example. I shouldn't complain too much. And and of course, so-called private industry was around there like vultures to pick up the products and the research and just market it. Well, since the 70s, the cutting edge of the economy has been moving towards being biology-based.
What's basically happening is that the West is aging, and not just the West. China and Japan are aging as well. Harry Dent covers this in his book, The Demographic Cliff. Dent talks about how as a society gets older, buying patterns shift from consumer goods like houses, cars, and refrigerators to services like vacations or healthcare. 2020 marked the first year in human history when we had more retirees than babies being born. This has never happened before. Because of it, capitalism is shifting focus from making things to providing healthcare as the next big boom. This ramped up especially after the 2008 financial collapse, which saw subprime mortgages see trillions of dollars disappear from the economy. As a solution to recoup those losses, Wall Street came up with a new model: catastrophe bonds. See the BBC talking about them here.
Catastrophe bonds are basically a bet against natural disasters, like hurricanes or earthquakes. Insurers issue the bonds, and investors get paid interest every year. At the end of the term, they get their money back. But if there is a catastrophe, then the insurers get to keep all the money to cover their losses, and the investors, lose everything.
One of the newest forms of catastrophe bonds was the so-called pandemic bond, which was invented in 2017. Whereas normal bonds were trading at 1% to sometimes even 0%, pandemic bonds were offering 8% returns to pension funds. Where else could you get such a sweet deal? So the working class saw their savings invested by police pension funds, firefighter pension funds, teachers union pension funds, and so forth. The only problem was that if a pandemic was announced, the bank got to keep all that money. In 2018, just a year after pandemic bonds were invented, the World Bank joined forces with the World Health Organization, as you can see from this article. The World Health Organization and World Bank joined forces to strengthen global health security. The very next year, when the World Health Organization declared a pandemic, trillions of dollars changed hands from the working class to the banking system. One World Health Organization whistleblower talks about it here.
So, the World Bank has signed with Gavi, the Global Alliance for Vaccine Initiative, Bill Gates, a partnership for the International Finance Facility to Immunization, IFFIM. What I found is that WHO, Gavi, and the Swiss government have signed agreements on managing the pandemic, and not only about the immunity. What I also found is that Gavi has made partnership with bilateral agencies of the United Nations for, like World Bank, probably others. World Bank is very important because they created something called the IFFIM, the International Financial Facility for Immunization, and this mechanism is really incredible. This mechanism is a mechanism that helps Gavi to get funds and donors, and those donors are member states. So we can find, like Italy has given millions to Gavi through this mechanism. They are having a stock bond market. They have made a financial system that so each time the country gives our taxes to the IFFM, they give it, in fact, to Gavi to apply his immunization program and global plan of vaccine, that you can find the plan on WHO 2016. So the public-private partnership of Gavi and WHO goes beyond that. It goes with multinationals, and it is also a creation of organs that suddenly act with finance.
Long story short, the new economy isn't going to be like the old economy, which was predicated on productivity and making things. In the new model, the global banking system, which was on the edge of insolvency, came up with a new paradigm based on an aging population. Every time a new virus is declared, trillions of dollars will be funneled into the bank accounts of the people declaring the appearance of the viruses. A second revenue stream will be exploited when nations channel taxes into so-called pandemic preparedness funds. Want to know when the next pandemic will strike? Check the pandemic bond maturity date of the last batch of bonds. People fear any political leader who has his finger on the red button. What political leaders fear is people having their finger on the red button, the subscribe button. Push it and see their narratives explode. Also consider donating to help keep these videos coming. And don't forget our website and newsletter, thenewamerican.com.